is well. Other stories unfold, there are new lives foretold. The stories shift and change in subtle ways, and the storyteller passes his last days. But the tales go on, and the tales go on, and the tales go on, and on, and on, and on, and on, and the tales go on.
What you're about to see is a glimpse of Harry Gillishan at work. Harry and I worked together and collaborated in our clinical work and in our theory development and teaching and training for about 20 years before his death in the fall of 1991. This is an interview that he did on one of his visits to Los Angeles when he was doing a workshop for Jennifer Andrews and David Clark. And the interview is actually with a family that they had just begun working with. It's a family with multiple parents and 3 children. It's a very fascinating case. You really see Harry as Harry in terms of his talking with people, the way he interacts with the children, his warmth, his not knowing, his really letting them take the lead. It's also a very fascinating case in terms of the follow-up of the case and the conversations that continued between the family and the therapist, as well as among the family members after this particular session. So please enjoy.
This consultation is the 3rd session with this family. Bob, his ex-wife Pat, and their 2 children, Marshall and Chris, and Bob's current wife Susie and their child Kylie are all in the room with Harry, Jennifer, and Dave. Bob and Susie have been married for 3 months, and according to custody arrangements, his sons spend 2 weeks with them and 2 weeks with Pat. Between the 1st and 2nd session, a fire destroyed Pat's home, and they strongly suspect Chris started the fire in the garage. But he says that wind came and blew matches across sandpaper. At this time, Harry's work was being described as a collaborative language systems approach, which means that the process of therapy is a therapeutic conversation, a dialogue, a talking with.
Yes. This is just the beginning.
Just the beginning, okay. And you two, Bob and Susie, you've been married about 3 months now, but have been with each other for a while.
Right.
And then, as I understand it, you began consulting with Jennifer and David here, concerned about some problems that young Chip here is having.
Chris.
Chris. Okay, Chris is having. And that has...
The thing, it was more than just that.
Okay, so fill me in on that, because that I don't know. Yeah.
I think it was issues of how they were handling the separation, the remarriage. They live 2 weeks with them, 2 weeks with me. They go back and forth. How that's working, if that's okay, and what we're doing, how we're raising them, and if we're doing the right thing, and what we can do better.
Okay, and what kinds of things were you noticing that sort of raised those issues and raised those questions?
Well, with Chris, I think there was some concern about a general lack of respect, especially, I think, for Susan being the new parent, somewhat, I think, for Pat, in general, somewhat of a defiance. And in particular, 2 behaviors. One was lying, and then he had some problems with having bedwetting or accidents even when he was awake. And with Marshall, I think it...
accidents like bowel movements too, or just...
And with Marshall, I think it was more of a concern about how he was doing in school and his ability to focus, or maybe inability to focus on the task at hand, and getting his work done.
Uh-huh.
So I mean, it's been, there really hasn't been this very constant kind of environment for everybody.
Yeah.
And it's been an adjustment for me. I mean,
Oh, yeah.
I had visited, we lived next door in apartments for a long time, but that was very different than all of us living, under the same roof. And all of a sudden, my being a friend became now a friend, a parent, an authority kind of figure, and so it was
How'd that go for you?
good days, bad days.
Good days,
Yeah.
bad days. What are some of the good days like?
We have fun.
You have fun.
Yeah, and I mean, and we all listen and we all respect each other, and it works really well. And then there are the other times when, for example, just this morning in the car, I said to Chris said he was hungry, and so I said, okay, let's find a Jack in the Box or McDonald's, and we'll get you some breakfast. And I couldn't find one. Went all the way down to Grandpa's, whatever that was down there. Couldn't find one, and.
Emporium.
To
To
what?
the Builder's Emporium. That's right. And he said there was an ice cream place, and that his father gives him ice cream for breakfast. And I said that I would not give him ice cream for breakfast. And then he said, well, then he'll have a taco. And I said, no, I would like to get you breakfast, and I was only going to get you breakfast. And then he said, I don't have to listen to you. And I said, well, why is that? And he said, I'm not telling you. I don't have to listen to you. So, So this is one of those mornings when it didn't run smoothly.
Wow.
Whereas last night it worked out really well. It was, so. So you want to tell them why you don't want to listen to me? No.
Well, maybe the boys and I a little bit later could do some talking together, but we'll see. And would you add anything to this, or do you have other concerns also?
Well, I think the things that Bob talked about are basically what I think boys are generally boys. And, I have problems with them. We have good days and bad days, but this being my only experience, I don't know if this is different than, anybody else has problems with this too.
Yeah. And as this has been building over time, who have you been talking to about these issues? Each other, and who else?
Here we are.
Neighbors, friends, family, or?
Family.
Family,
Probably family, yeah.
And what other families around?
I don't have any other family close by.
Close
My
by.
mother's in Michigan, and my sister lives in Northern California in Santa Cruz.
Okay.
And probably I talked to them. I talked to my mother and said, "Do Teresa and I fight all the time?" Probably.
Oh, she's talking about when you were this age.
Right.
Oh,
I
okay.
was. Yeah.
Didn't your sister come down and visit with you?
My sister was just down here last week. Yeah.
Yeah.
At your request?
Yes.
Okay. And what family do y'all have?
I have my father and my brother and my sister. All around. My mom is deceased, and my dad. I have my dad's new wife.
And do you talk and share some of these issues with them? And
Yeah.
what sorts of input do they give you?
Well, my family is not docile. I mean, they definitely, if they have opinions, they share them.
Yeah.
So.
And what kind of opinions they have?
Well, my father is of the opinion that I should just be nice and just tolerate everything because things will work themselves out.
You're kind of an optimist.
I think it's more denial.
Denial. Okay.
Delusionary. I don't know. I mean, that's just who he is. I mean, he operates from a position of, he likes Bob. Bob's a nice guy, so everything will work out.
Okay.
And my sister is an attorney, and I think that says a lot about who she is and what she is. She's a very black-white kind of person, and it's either this way or that way. I'm either right or I'm wrong. Bob's either right or wrong. Kids are either right or wrong. And my brother just, whatever I say is fine.
Okay.
So, and I have a sister-in-law. I mean, I have other people.
Yeah. Okay. And Bob, have you been talking with anyone about?
No, I don't. I don't share things particularly, especially with my family. I have a sister in Washington, and my mom's in Ohio, my dad's in Florida. We've never been a particularly close family. I have a couple of friends, but my best friend doesn't have kids, and so I don't share.
And let me ask you all, in terms of your work, because we didn't really have a chance to talk much about it, what sorts of things do you think I need to know about what you've all been doing together and where you are with what you're trying to do?
Well, I think we talked a little bit about the family's concern about Chris's lying, whether it was something that really could be dealt with in some different way with him. And Bob had talked about having gone through that himself, and actually, Marshall, you also talked about having had that habit yourself and having grown out of it, and nobody could tell us how they got out of it.
It just happened? Wow.
Which got me thinking about myself. I think
it hadn't happened yet?
To me. I'm not sure. So that's still been a concern, and we began to look at that and talk about how we might experiment with that. And then suddenly there was this crisis where...
Well, that was the other thing you did tell me about, that your home just burned down.
Right. Well, it didn't burn down, but the garage burnt down and it caught on the house and burned a good part of the house.
So we thought perhaps it would be a good idea to talk about that. So we kind of shifted into talking about how that was for different people.
So you're kind of temporarily displaced while it's being fixed back? That must be hard.
It's okay, and it's hard. I mean, it's not miserable. We're in a nice place. And
Did you lose a lot of things that are irreplaceable? Or?
Some. We lost. I had like about 6 quilts that my grandmothers had made for me, and they're gone.
Yeah.
And Bob's mother's Haviland china is gone, and some other crystal pieces, and those are the only, irreplaceable kinds of things. And
Well, photographs and things.
Fortunately, we didn't really lose anything like that.
That's wonderful.
And I think that also there was a perspective that happened very quickly for us, because Chris had been playing in the garage, and when the fire started, Pat couldn't find him, and was certain, because she couldn't find him, that he had run and hid in the back of the garage. And in fact,
that he might have been in.
We thought he was in the garage.
45 minutes or so. She called me after about 20 minutes and basically said the house is on fire and we can't find Chris. So I got there about probably 10 minutes later and still hadn't found Chris.
You all must have been panicked.
Yeah, it was. But finally, Chris showed up. And he'd run away when the fire started, and I think got scared from it. And
were you scared, Chris? Oh, bad.
So that helped us to, I think, we lost things, and we lost memories, and we lost some emotional parts, but could have been significantly worse, and we came real close to thinking it was.
Wow.
So.
Hey, where were you while this was happening, Marshall?
I was inside with my mom.
Was your mom?
And we were just reading the paper, and then we saw smoke coming out of the garage, and then...
That was the first thing you saw, was the smoke?
And then my mom went outside and saw that there was the fire, and then she ran back in. I called 911. She got a fire extinguisher and went outside and just started spraying the garage fully with the extinguisher, and the next minute the whole backyard was black. She couldn't see, she couldn't breathe.
Happened that quick, just sort of bang. Was the garage full of paint and stuff like most garages?
You name it. It was in there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that happened just a short while ago.
2 weeks ago today.
2 weeks ago. Wow. How do you get so calm so quick?
I I bet. Sure I am. I just...
Hard. And there's some concern that Chris might have been playing with matches there that started it.
We don't know.
Don't know, yeah.
Stop.
I was trying to think of the best way to use this time. I understand there's a time limit. There's some time you've got to be somewhere at a certain time.
Well, he has a basketball game at 12:30.
12:30, so we need to be moving along pretty quick. I was thinking that it might be helpful if all of us could spend a few minutes talking with the boys,
Sure.
and then maybe get back with the parents and talk a little bit, and then... Mouth easier than that. Whoops, there it is right there.
There it is.
I'll give it to you.
Yeah, let's see. Oh, yeah, let's see what's on it. Right there, yeah. Oh, you had another one coming up behind it, pushing it out. Yeah. Oh, you got a brand new one in there to take its place. That's pretty good. Gosh. Well, let me ask you guys a question. Your mom and your dad separated about 3 years ago, and then your dad's now got another wife, your stepmom. And you all stay with your mom, and you stay with your dad and his new wife? Both?
Well, as my mom said, it's 2 weeks with my dad and Susan, and then we go back to my mom's house, and it's 2 weeks with her.
Uh-huh.
And then we just go back and forth for
Both
2
of you,
weeks.
just the two of you, Kylie stays with your mom and dad, and just you two move back and forth every 2 weeks?
Yeah, well, Susan and Dad Kylie stays with.
I'm sorry?
With Susan and Kylie, Susan and my dad only stays with Kylie.
With Kylie, right. And sometimes you're there for 2 weeks and then 2 weeks with your mom. Okay. How does that go for you? Do you like it that way?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wish it was 1 week and 1 week.
1 week and 1. You'd like that better. How come?
Because every time I'm at my mom's, I keep saying mom, 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 mom. And then when I'm at my dad's, I call my dad mom.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I'm at my dad's, and then we're going back to my mom's, I call my mom dad.
Oh, you get kind of mixed up about it. Yeah. Do you have that same problem, Marshall?
Well, no, only a little bit.
A little bit.
Yeah, because sometimes I call my daycare teacher Pat or Mom.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
And sometimes I call her, my daycare teacher, my teacher's name, Mrs. Campbell.
Oh, so Miss Campbell's your teacher in the regular school, and then you have a daycare where you go to after school, huh? And then your mom or your dad pick you up at daycare. Mm-hmm. Now, what do you call Susie?
Susan.
Susan. Okay. And you call your mom, Mom, and you call your dad what?
Dad.
Dad. Okay.
And sometimes I call my mom Mommy, and sometimes I call my dad Daddy.
Okay. You both kind of have different ways of calling them, huh? Yeah. Wow. Well, now, what would you make different in that? You said maybe 1 week and 1 week. What would you make different if you could do it?
Well, I don't really know.
Uh-huh. Mm-hmm. What would help you not get the names mixed up between your teacher and your mom and your daycare teacher?
I don't know.
No. Wow. Well, what happens when you call your daycare teacher Pat?
Well, I say, when I call my daycare teacher my mom, I say, Mom, Roxanne, because that's her name.
Roxanne's her name, okay. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Gosh. Now, we were talking a few minutes ago. Your dad said sometimes you were having a little trouble with school. What kind of trouble were you having in school?
Well, I was just fighting with this little kid.
Uh-huh. How little?
Yeah. He's in 4th grade, but he's about right here.
About to there on you, yeah. And what were you all fighting about?
Well, I don't know.
Just happened?
Yeah.
Wow. Well, fights go that way sometimes, yeah. Who started it?
Well, I don't know.
Don't know. Just happened again, yeah. Huh. Do you know the kid?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's his name?
I'm sorry, Chris?
What's his name? Reuben.
Reuben's his name, okay. Reuben. He lives there in the neighborhood with y'all?
Mm-mm.
Doesn't? Oh, just goes to
Just go to school.
same school, okay. Well, how big is the school you go to?
Pretty big.
Pretty big? Huh. Wow. And how's school going for you? So you're in the, let me guess, fourth grade. So in the fourth grade, you're beginning to do some beginning fractions, aren't you? In math?
Oh, yeah.
How
We jump around from, like, multiplying to long division,
Long
to
division, yeah.
harder multiplying, to
Yeah.
measurements.
Uh-huh. And how's that going for you?
It's okay.
Okay. Which goes the best for you in school?
Well, I'm not really sure because they're all just about the same.
Really? Flunking everything?
No, not quite.
Not quite, okay. What kind of grades you making?
Average grade.
Average grade.
A couple of them are pretty good, above average a little bit, and some of them are better than above average.
Better than above average, okay. And who helps you with your homework?
Well, I usually do it at school unless it's reading to my mom
Uh-huh.
or I have no homework.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay, and you're in the first grade, Chris. How's that going for you?
Fine.
Let's see, in the first grade, that's where you begin to learn to do reading and writing. Okay, and you make the letters and you keep them in the lines and all. Pretty good.
And sometimes each day, at story time we get a treat.
Oh, really? What kind of treats you get?
Like cookies, candy, gum.
Okay, you said sometimes you get the treat. What makes the difference? How come sometimes?
Because sometimes my teacher doesn't give it.
Okay, is that when she's mad at you or something?
She doesn't. Sometimes she doesn't. She forgets to bring the treats.
Forgets? Oh, okay. And then she can't give it to you, yeah. Yeah. Well, let me ask you another kind of question. It's a hard one. Your mom asked right at the beginning when we were asking about the work you all are doing together here. She asked, she and your dad have been talking, and Susan too, have been talking about whether it's best for you to be 2 weeks here and 2 weeks there, or should they do that differently? How would you ask, if your mother asked you that question, what would you tell her?
Well, I just like it 2 weeks and 2 weeks.
You do? Uh-huh. And what about that do you like? What about that do you like?
Well, I just like spending 2 weeks with my mom and 2 weeks with my dad, and because sometimes when I'm at my mom's house, I'm close to a friend. And sometimes when I'm at my dad's house, I'm close to a friend.
You have friends in both places. Well, how far apart do your mom and your dad live?
Well, my mom lives like a block away from her old house, or two.
Well, that's the one they're fixing that burned?
Yeah.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
She's living in an apartment now. And my dad... Oakwood Apartments. And my dad lives in Santa Monica, right next to my school.
Oh, so they don't live that far apart? Okay. Can you walk back and forth? Too far.
Too far for walking.
Okay. How would you said you'd change it to every week instead of every 2 weeks. How come you would do that? What would make that better for you? Now, your dad said that one of the things he's worried about is that sometimes you fib to him. You don't tell things quite the right way. Do you do that? You do? Huh. How come? Just do. Okay. What kinds of things do you fib about?
Well, like, I'm at school.
Uh-huh.
And this kid said, like the SH word.
Like to do what now?
The SH word.
word.
Oh. Uh-huh.
And I say that he said the SH word and the F word.
Oh, you said two words instead of one. Uh-huh.
And that's when I lies.
Oh. Gosh. Well, what are you doing to try to make it so that you don't lie?
Well, I say that he really did say that.
Uh-huh.
And then that means that I'm lying.
Gosh. Well, now, your mom and dad said that when the garage burned down and started on the house, that they didn't know where you were because they looked for you and couldn't find you. Where were you?
I was hiding in the alley.
Hiding in the alley? Wow. And how come were you hiding?
Because I thought my mom might thought that I did it.
Oh, she might think you burned it. The garage up. Wow. What made you think that?
Well, I thought she just might have ground me.
Uh-huh.
And because I thought she thought that I did it, but I didn't.
Well, now, when you do things that your mom gets cross at you or scolds you, what does she do?
Mostly spanks me.
She spanks you? Where, on the bottom or right there? Real hard? How many times?
One.
One?
Twice.
Just once? You too? You get spankings?
Well, not too much anymore. I used to get them when I was lying or did something real bad.
Uh-huh.
But I don't do that anymore, so I don't get spankings a lot.
Uh-huh. Okay. Wow.
But
Well,
sometimes she does.
And how about Susan? How does she scold you? Does she spank too? Doesn't. What does she do?
She just tells my dad.
Oh, get your dad to do it.
Spanks me.
Dad does. Well, supposing you're there with Susan and your dad's not there, what does she do?
Call my dad up.
Joe calls him up. And then what? You talk to him on the phone? What does he tell you?
He tells me, do what Susan says.
Do what your mom says. Oh. Okay. What do you say back?
I don't know.
Wow. Well, now, who scolds you or punishes the harder, your mom or your dad?
Mom.
Mom does. Wow. She pops hardest, huh? Who gets maddest at you the most?
Mom.
Mom does. And what kinds of things does she get mad at?
Well, when I lie, when I have a wet bed.
Okay. Does that happen a lot, having a wet bed? Doesn't. And after your mom's mad at you, how do you make friends again? Just happens? Wow. How do you see them making friends again, Marshall?
Well, it takes at least 15 minutes.
15
and then
minutes,
they just like forget about it.
So it just goes away?
Yeah.
That's pretty good, yeah. Wow. What kinds of things you get mad at?
At him?
Or him, or anybody, or anything?
Well, I get mad at him because if I tell him to just be quiet when I'm playing a game or something, he says, no, I don't have to, and I get really mad at that.
Really? What do you do then?
Well, sometimes I tell my mom, and sometimes I just do the scolding myself.
Does he listen to you?
Well, as I said, he said, I don't have to do that. So, not a lot.
Well, this morning, Chris, Susan said that she wanted to get you breakfast, and you said you didn't have to do that.
He said he wanted ice cream.
Ice cream, yeah.
And then Susan said that, no, I'm not getting you ice cream, you can have breakfast. And then he said, then I'll have a taco.
Yeah.
And then Susan said, I want to get you breakfast, not lunch or dinner or dessert. And he said, I don't have to listen to you because you're not my dad, or something like that.
Oh. And then you said you had a secret you wouldn't tell her about that. What was the secret?
I don't have to listen to you.
Don't have to listen.
And then Susan said, why?
Yeah.
And then he said, I don't have to tell you.
That's right, I don't have to tell you. And if you could tell me why you don't have to listen to her, what would you tell me? And your dad, you have to listen to him? And Susan, you don't have to? Okay. What do you think about that?
Well, I think he just should listen to all the adults.
All the adults?
That way he doesn't get in trouble for lying.
Oh, okay. How do you try to help your brother not to do that?
Well, I just usually tell my mom that Chris is lying, and then she takes care of it. So all I do is tell my mom.
Okay. And maybe your mom can help him with it. What does she do to help him with it?
Well, I don't know.
No problem, yeah. Well, gosh, I've asked you all 1,000 questions. Do you have any questions you want to ask me? No? Let me ask you one more. You all have been coming here now, working with Jennifer here and David. How's that going for you?
Fine.
It's going okay? Who's the easiest to talk to, David or Jennifer?
Both.
Both are good, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, who tells the best stories?
I don't know.
Eeny, meeny, miny, moe. This kid's going to be a politician. Okay. Who's your best friend, Chris?
Well, I think I have 6 best friends. 6
best friends. Oh, you're lucky.
At this point, the boys leave and the parents come back into the room.
Well, let me ask you a question. You had raised the issue earlier in terms of some of the things you're concerned about, some of the trouble you're having initially with Marshall and school. And was that school work or was it behavior?
Well,
or?
Marshall is very smart.
Oh, both kids are very bright.
Right.
Yeah.
And Marshall has always been at the top of his class, always. In Montessori, when he was like going into a second grade age, he was doing fourth grade work.
Wow.
This year he's in a gifted program, and he's not the smartest kid in the class anymore.
Yeah.
And he's always sort of coasted through. And now he's challenged, and he has to continue performing in order to stay in the gifted program. And he's always sort of been not, I won't want to say unfocused, because he can get real focused, but not on what we think he ought to be focused on. And so he has so much math to do each day, and he either forgets his math book or forgets what the assignment is, or I brought my math book but I left it at my after-school care, or one excuse or another. And it's not that he's not smart, it's that you can't get him to buckle down and do his work.
Do you think that's just a passing thing, or do you think something's
I
happening?
don't know, but I don't want to wait and find out that it wasn't.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, he said something like he tends to do most of his homework at school, does he?
Well, I don't know. Sometimes he does. But he has an excuse. We had one time when they had a substitute teacher in his after-school program, and she didn't give them a set time to do the homework, so he couldn't get his homework done. And I said, that's baloney. You know what you've got to do each night. And so.
Well, now, like that homework, how do you all try to correlate that across the two households?
Well, we try to be real consistent on these. We try to be real consistent on these are the rules. No TV and no Nintendo until the homework's done. And Bob had done a contract with Marshall about how much math he did each week, and if he didn't get it done, then he was, well, I don't know. I don't remember.
Yeah, well, he was going to do 10 pages of math, and if he didn't get 10 pages done, he had no TV or Nintendo until he not only had completed those 10 pages, but the 10 pages for the following week.
Oh, wow.
He's supposed to do a book report every week.
And while he was with me not this last time, but the time before, we go to school Tuesday morning, he says, oh, I have to write a note for you to sign. Okay, so he writes this note. Dear Mom, I am 7 book reports behind.
7? Wow.
I said, Marshall. And so I signed it, and I dated it and put the time on there, because I wanted her to know that I had just found that out, you know. I mean, we could have done some over the weekend. And then Wednesday night, he'd done 2 book reports in the past 2 weeks, and Wednesday night, he started this book, he finished it Thursday morning, and wrote the book report. And so there's no reason why he can't do this stuff.
Well, besides Nintendo, what does he do besides his homework?
TV.
TV?
That's about it.
Sports.
Well, he's not. He's
Pretty active. They both look like pretty active kids.
They're in
Yeah.
soccer, basketball, baseball.
Wow.
Cub Scouts.
Yeah. So they got a lot to keep them busy.
Yes.
Yeah.
And us busy.
And takes saxophone.
Oh, really? Yeah. Where'd you get the musical talent from?
Not me. Actually, Bob played a lot of instruments in school.
I see. Wow.
And that's one of the hard things for me. At Marshall's age, I was in a boys' choir. I met twice a week. I was taking piano lessons. I was taking violin lessons. I also was in Cub Scouts. I also did the sports. And so, you know, I had this image of the way, this was my childhood, therefore Marshall's childhood must follow a similar pattern, at least, you know, at ages he ought to be involved in certain things. And I think that's real hard, because Marshall certainly is not me, and I want him to be me. He's immensely creative. And in terms of his defocus, I think that's really where it comes from. And
they're delightful young kids to talk with. Yeah.
They're fun. He thinks, he imagines, and he comes up with some amazing, we've always talked about how some of the things that comes out of Marshall that he's thought about, that he wonders about, that he creates, it's just, he's a great artist. And,
He had an idea that the Gulf War was about Saddam wanting water, and what he was going to write, we were going to write to the president and say that what he ought to do is dig a tunnel under Kuwait, like they're doing the channel, you know, under the English
Oh, the English Channel, yeah.
That he had read about that in school, and so he was going to write and suggest that he do that, and then there wouldn't have to be a war about water.
Oh, wow. I'm on his side. Do something, yeah. Right. Gosh. Well, Susan, you've been sort of involved with martial law for about 3 years. Since
least,
June,
yeah.
somewhere in that time period, yeah.
Probably longer.
And what changes have you noticed as he's moved on through these 3 years?
Marshall's very special. I mean, he's very special to me. He's a very sensitive person, and I genuinely like him.
Yeah.
I think Marshall has a very difficult time hurting anybody, and so he will oftentimes not say certain things. I mean, I think Marshall and I are friends. You know, he says a lot of things to me that for whatever reason he won't say either to Pat or to Bob because he doesn't want to disappoint them. He doesn't want to offend them. I think in the beginning I had mentioned once he had I'm only bringing this up because it's an example, but it's, you know, he had a concern about Pat being concerned about her weight or something, and he asked me if I would talk to her.
Oh, to help her out.
Right. You know, he talks about just very serious things sometimes, you know, and concerns that, I don't know. I mean, he has concerns sometimes about me and why I don't cook, you know, and...
You don't cook?
No, I don't cook. He cooks.
He cooks, huh?
I do the dishes.
That's a pretty good deal, huh?
Not really. I'm beginning to, you know, well, there are 5 of us, so it's not a great deal. But I think that I'm not the stereotypic kind of female, so sometimes that's difficult for him too, and it causes him some confusion.
For Marshall? What sort of confusion do you think?
Well, I mean, he says sometimes that I don't do things around the house because he doesn't see me do the things that typically, like Pat does.
I see.
You know, I mean, he recognizes that Pat does everything. The 2 weeks that she's with them, you know, she takes them everywhere. She, you know, she does all the laundry. She does everything. He sees me as having Bob, who does everything. And so, you know, and he talks to me about that. Sometimes he doesn't say it in a real nice way. I mean, he just says, you know, you never do anything.
Okay.
And, you know, and I know Marshall, I mean, he's not saying it to be malicious. It's just, it's a very different environment for him.
Well, now, in terms of coming in sort of as a stepmother, so to speak, you've had the advantage of sort of being there for a long period of time, next door neighbors, you said, in the apartment, and sort of familiar, so you didn't sort of come in brand new like some stepmothers do. And I'm wondering, most of the times when I talk with families, sometimes when the woman comes in sort of brand new, the children have a hard time accepting the new mother, and yet you didn't come in brand new. Did that make other kinds of problems for you and the kids?
Well, I think I mean, we still relate as we always have, as friends. There have been the occasional times when I've had to explain that, you know, when I say something, you know, you really have to listen to me.
Yeah.
But Marshall isn't, I don't have difficulty dealing with Marshall. You know, Marshall had, Bob has more trouble, I think, with Marshall not doing things within a certain time period, whereas with me, I don't do things within a certain time period, so, you know, so I don't really have trouble. I don't think he has, I mean, maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think he has a lot of trouble dealing with me, because I think he relates to me as a friend.
But then you have to come in now kind of as a parent. How's that shift gone for you and them?
Well, I have more difficulty with Chris. Like I said, I don't have the difficulty with Marshall because Marshall listens, you know. I mean, then again, I'm not the one who sits on him about the homework. You know, so I'm not the one who I can probably count on you know, one hand the times when I've ever had to even threaten him that I would take away Nintendo or something, because that's just not the interaction I have with him.
Kind of in the position you're in as a friend, like with Marshall, and not having the strong parental role that you got to come from. What advice do you give these two about how they can deal with them a little better or make it work better for them?
Yeah, I'm always full of advice. You know, it's interesting. This particular time. I don't really know. What can I say? What have I said to you in the past?
Well, certainly you've said to me to not wait quite so long to make a correction. For example, we talked last week when we were talking to you. Marshall was laying on the couch, and I was sitting on the other side of the room, and I noticed he was laying on the couch, and he shouldn't have been laying down, and his feet were on the couch. But instead of interrupting, I didn't say anything. And finally, Pat got upset and said something to him. So Susan later said, well, you should have said. And I said, you're right, I should have, and here's why I didn't. But that's the kind of thing that you've said to me, and that I maybe go along with the program too long before I try to make a correction or say something to stop some action. Also, I think, again, for me, that I came from a family of disciplinarians and a rather rigid, I think, approach to life, and I tend to bring that into my family, and that I need to be reminded periodically that that's not necessarily a healthy approach always.
Who does the reminding? You?
Yeah, absolutely, because he has to lighten up with Marshall.
Yeah.
He's much easier on Chris.
On Chris. Yeah. What thoughts do you have about that, Pat?
About Bob?
Yeah.
Oh, well, I was thinking about it. He...
Who does the reminding? You?
Yeah, absolutely, because he has to lighten up with Marshall.
Yeah.
He's much easier on Chris.
On Chris. Yeah. What thoughts do you have about that, Pat?
About Bob?
Yeah.
Oh, well, I was thinking about it. He has a high threshold of, what he'll put up with. But then once that's met...
Like a volcano then, or?
Well, I wouldn't say that, but yeah.
You know what's interesting? He's very even keel as far as his voice. I mean, it's very low key, and he doesn't yell. And then when he does yell, he doesn't just raise his voice a notch, whereas I may or Pat may. He screams, and that's very intimidating. It's intimidating to me. Like I said, I won't deal with you because I don't deal with people who are out of control. But and it's scary.
Yeah,
it's scary.
I thought with young Chris, now he's doing this fibbing, and he evidently ran off scared because he thought he set the fire or was going to get blamed for it, or whether he did or didn't. Chances are he did, I guess. I have no way of knowing. What do we need to worry about with him?
Well, he's... I get that he is not stopping this, that it's getting...
the fibbing.
Yeah.
What kinds of things he fib about?
Everything.
Everything.
Everything. Whose towel is that laying on the floor? Not mine. Not mine. I didn't do that. And he does it. Chris has always been liked. He's always been cute. He's always been loving and everything. And he wants to maintain that. And so, God forbid I should do anything bad. Or, no. God forbid anybody should think that I'm doing anything bad, because they might not like me anymore. And I think that's really sort of where it comes from. And what we've tried to do is say, that's not going to make... I don't love you less for you lying. I don't like that you're lying. And lying is worse than whatever you did. And we want to be able to trust you and everything. So just please tell the truth. And I think that he's more creative in it, so that there's no way... He thinks that there's no way you'll figure out that he's lying.
Wow.
Just sort of gets deeper into it.
Well, I mean, most of the fibbing has to do with things like, it's not my towel, I didn't do it, or sort of to not get blamed or not get...
Yeah, and it's things that there is absolutely...
Yeah, you're not going to murder the kid for a towel, I don't think.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
This morning, for example, there was some toast out there. He had some, and Kylie had some. So I asked Chris, I said, did Kylie throw her toast away, or did you eat it? He said, no, she threw it away. I said, gosh, I wish you had eaten it, because, that's a waste of toast. And he said, oh. And he walked away. It was like, the setup of that situation was, no matter what he would have said, you know, it seems strange to not even tell the truth about the toast.
Well, this morning, what did you make of his comment, I don't have to, or you can't make me, whatever it was?
I don't have to listen to you?
I don't have to listen to you, that was it, yeah.
It pissed me off.
I'll bet, yeah.
You know?
But
and that's why I said, well, tell me why you don't have to listen to me. And as he has done on many occasions, you know, he'll say, I don't have to tell you, or I don't want to. I mean, so he really...
Does he signal you out for that, or does he do that with all of you?
He doesn't do that with me.
No.
He doesn't, he'll fold his arms and not talk. You don't think he'll do that?
I don't think that to a certain degree that he does it with you.
Yeah, that's true.
Mm-hmm.
You know, but when he does, then my approach for that usually is to go away, isolate myself from him, or just distance myself from him, and say, you know, when you're ready, then come back and we'll have a conversation of old, you know.
No. Does he do that with you, Pat?
Well, he's never said I don't have to listen to you.
Yeah.
But he certainly gets, you know, stubborn, and I'm not going to do this.
Where does he get that from?
I can't imagine. He's a lot like, Chris is more like me than I'd like to admit. But he's real...
He says you pop the hardest.
He said what?
You pop the hardest.
I pop the hardest?
On the bottom, yeah.
Oh! Huh. That's interesting. But he's real, if I don't get my way, then I'm just gonna, I'm gonna stand here and I'm not gonna do anything you want until I get my way. And so, fine, stand there as long as you want. This is what we're doing.
But I think he does do it more with Pat and with me than he does with Bob.
But now, some of the things we talk about, like the fibbing, where, you know, it's not my towel, I didn't do it, or whatever. A lot of youngsters I've worked with that get into that are kind of having a hard time growing into boyhood. They're still a little more babyish. Does he have that problem?
Well, we talked about before the difference between the two houses. When he's at my house, he's the baby. When he's their house, he's the middle child, and so that, you know.
Oh, because of Kylie.
Yes,
I
Kylie.
see, yeah.
But he's always played with Marshall's friends. He's always been a part of the older group. He doesn't know he's 3 years younger than his brother. He thinks he's the same age and can do everything as long as that gets him what he wants. And, you know. But I don't think.
I'm not sure, but I think that one of the things that you said was right on the mark, and that is that Chris has always been popular. He developed socially very early. Marshall developed socially very late.
Yeah, he told me he had 7 best friends.
Marshall said that?
No.
Chris.
I wouldn't doubt it. And he developed not only socially, but he developed physically early. He very coordinated and very good athletically, and, you know, running and very strong. Now I think other kids are catching up to him, and so the differential is disappearing. He also went from a school where he was one of 14 kids to in a class and 30 kids in the school to where he's one of 30 kids in a class and 450 kids in the school.
Wow.
And
that's a big change.
Not only that, but he was one of the older kids at Montessori, and now he's one of the younger kids in the school. So I think there's a lot of that kind of change that's going on, and so I don't know if it's you know, sort of growing into boyhood is exactly the way I express it, but I think that it's the whole thing about him being used to being you know, socially accepted and popular and liked and sort of a leader.
Yeah.
And now I don't think that he is a particular.
Yeah, one thing too we discussed, and it may not be legitimate, but it just makes sense. That I think right now he's real insecure. And he's real insecure. And so.
How come?
Well, because of all of the changes.
Because of all,
Because of, he doesn't necessarily know where he fits in. There, you know, are so many options now. You know, and I think that when he, so one of the reasons he may lie is because, again, not just because he wants people to, you know, to like him and everything, but I think it's real important now. When you're insecure, you tend to want to try and manage your environment more, and when you can't, you know, you're going to say whatever you think the next person's going to say because you don't want to create even more difficulties for you.
No.
So.
Let me ask another kind of question. When you all talked with him about where he was for those 2 hours, I mean, Lord, the panic you must have had about, my God, where is he? My first thought when I heard you describe this, like when the kids are teenagers, you know, they're not home by 2 o'clock in the morning and you think they're dead in the highway and they show up, you want to kill them.
Oh, no, that wasn't the case at all.
How did you all handle his coming back after that?
Well, it's interesting because I was across the street and down a couple of doors, and Bob was right in front of the house. And Chris came around the corner with my neighbor, found him and brought him around the corner. And he came down, and I just went running to him immediately.
Oh, yeah.
Well, he ran to his dad, and Bob picked him up. And they had traffic control people there, and they thought I was trying to get back in the house that my son was there. And so they blocked me from getting to my son.
Wow.
And then I'm not sure what happened after that. I knew I wasn't able to get to Chris, and then I was with Chris, and I don't know what happened. Bob said they...
Well, I saw you then. I picked him up and hugged him, and then I heard you and the commotion out in the street. And so we came out in the street, and then we were together.
How did he explain his being gone for so long and hiding or whatever it was he was doing?
He said he saw the fire and he was scared and he hid.
I haven't talked to him about it. Because for the last 2 weeks they've been with Pat, so the only interactions that I've had with him have been sort of sporadic, with the sort of the day of the fire or basketball practice or whatever.
Okay. Well, look, we're going to run out of time here.
Okay, so as I said in the beginning, you've just seen a glimpse of Harry Golishan at work and doing what I've been calling since his death C therapy, which is collaborating, connecting, and constructing. And I think that's the process of what you just saw. That's his work is very much an example of the kind of work that we are continuing to do at the Institute and continuing to work with people in learning situations. And I invite you, if you're interested in learning more about Harry's work and my work and the work of those of us at the Institute, you can contact me there and be glad to talk with you about it.
The uncertainty and humility of this less interventionalist approach encourages creativity and continued conversations. 2 weeks later, when the whole family was seen, they requested viewing parts of this interview. After reviewing the part with Harry and the boys, Pat and Susie got into a lively discussion about the need for continuous parenting and discipline. Everyone was more open to renegotiate the terms of the custody. 2 weeks later, they reported that Chris told them that he had started the fire. As the family began to hold their own conversations, we suggested they continue to do so and invite us into their story again when and if they needed us.
A wise man listens, the children tell their many stories. He listens well, from tales of sorrow, pain and fears. He helps transform all that he hears, so full of curiosity. It shows in what he asks, in lively conversation. They all drop their masks. A wise man listens. The children tell their many stories. He listens well, sharing dreams of possibilities leads to new realities, expanding the mystery and rewriting his story. A wise man listens. The children tell their many stories. He listens well. Others Other stories unfold, there are new lives foretold. The stories shift and change in subtle ways. And the storyteller passes his last days. But the tales go on, and the tales go on, and the tales go on, and on, and on, and on, and on, and the tales go on.